for some countries and for some men and women, climate change is making their life more complicated. It's a little bit more cool, it's a little bit more hot. For us, it's a matter of death and life.
Gender and climate change are extremely important because of the very severe impacts that climate change is having now in countries all over the world. It impacts differently on women and men because their roles are very different. It undermines poor livelihoods. It is undermining food security. And it's women who have to put food on the table. It's women who have to go further in drought to get the water, who have to go further for firewood.
In my work, unfortunately, I have to pull the bodies of women after floods because they were never taught how to swim. So the time for action is now.
Women certainly play a huge role in the change that you can do in the reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, but also in the adaptation programs that minimize the damage.
We have cases of women, for example, in which they used to raise chickens and now their whole town is flooded, and now they're raising ducks because they found out there was a way to live with what climate change is causing to them.
I actually quite like the Chinese phrase that women hold up half the sky. There's no way you can manage climate change, which is the sky, without women. When I began first working on the climate change issue, I'd go to a meeting on energy policy and climate policy, and there might be one woman at the table and 25 men. It's a remarkable imbalance. There's been an effort to try to bolster that, to have more women engaged in the delegations working on these issues.
24 years ago, when the climate agreement was adopted, climate convention, it was gender blind. And that's not good for women because if you're gender blind, you don't see the discrimination that's happening.
For the past 8 years, we have gradually been seeing the incorporation of gender in the decisions and in the mandates.
So the COP22 discussion was basically a synthesis of the last several years of work, and it elevates the role of women in delegations, in the secretariat and the institutional arrangements, and in the work of countries to address the climate problem more aggressively.
So it was very important in Marrakesh that we had a really significant decision on gender. Now we have a commitment to an action plan on gender. We have a commitment to have women who are from grassroots background listened to and taking part in decision making. We have a commitment to take note of local and traditional knowledge, which is a very important thing for Indigenous peoples and for women at grassroots, that they're respected for what they know and for the expertise they have in trying to cope with their issues.
There is a gap from policy, from very good text, to really unfolding it and making it happen. Why? Because the target is not to have a nice document that tells you what to do. The challenge is how to do it.
We have to live up to the commitments in this plan of action so that we will really understand that we won't have good climate policy until it is completely gender sensitive, completely knowledgeable about the differential impacts, and women's voices are heard at every level.
People look at climate and say, well, that's 30 years out, maybe it's 50 years out, maybe it's not till 2100, so I have other more immediate worries. But one of the problems with climate is that once you set it in motion, it won't change back quickly. Which means if we want to avoid incredible damages, we have very little time to do that avoiding. There's no sector that's not part of the solution, just as unfortunately there's no sector that's not part of the emissions problem. So any individual who wants to get engaged has scope, has space, has a real opportunity to make change in a positive direction.